Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ed Selich, President of Speak Up Newport. I want to welcome you to Speak Up Newport's third webinar in our series of programs we're presenting during the current pandemic crisis. The Speak Up Newport Board is continuing our 39-year tradition of presenting monthly programs of community interest via Zoom webinars. If you missed out on the first two and would like to see them again, you can go to our website, www.speakupnewport.com, to view them. Speak Up Newport is your community forum for discussion of civic issues. We sponsor 10 programs a year. We do the annual Mayor Dinner, which we will be doing our 40th in 2021. And we award 4 $3,000 scholarships to Corona Del Mar and Newport Harbor High School seniors each year. This afternoon, we have a program entitled, How Will We Shop, Dine, and Travel in Newport Beach as the Coronavirus Restrictions Are Relaxed? We have a great panel this afternoon. Our panelists are Steve Rosansky, CEO of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce, Gary Sherwin, President of Visit Newport Beach, Jim Walker from the Newport Beach Restaurant Association and Bungalow Restaurant, and Mario Marovic from the Lounge Group. Now, if you want to ask a question, please click on the chat button at the bottom of your screen and type in a question. And you can do that anytime during the program. And now I'd like to introduce our moderator, council member, former mayor, and Speak Up Newport board member, Rush Hill.
Thanks, Ed. Well, tonight is going to be an interesting panel as we determine what the new normal will be and how long that might last. As you heard about our panelists tonight, we have the self-proclaimed mayor of the business community, Steve Rosansky. And we have the, I think we call him the king of the destination resorts, Gary Sherwin. We have Jim Walker, who knows how to cook a steak. And we have Mario Marovic, who is the king of the margarita. So it should be an interesting gathering of folks. So we're going to dive right in. Each panelist will have 10 minutes. And don't be afraid to type in your questions as we go along, and we'll try to cover those at the end. So, Steve, we're going to start with you.
Thank you, Rush. It's good to be here. Excuse me. Got a little webinar cough these days. I've been doing so many of these things. It's a lot of talking. But I was asked to talk about the retail environment here in town. Obviously, Chamber of Commerce, we represent almost 700 member businesses who are obviously, most of them going through significant challenges here as we are starting to come out of the self-imposed shutdown of the economy by, all levels, the state, the county, and the federal government. So looking back a little bit, probably 2 months ago now, middle of March, 2.5 months ago, most businesses started shutting down unless they were what was deemed essential type businesses. So things like supermarkets, Walmart, Costco, pharmacies, auto repair, medical offices, banks, they stayed open, but virtually everything else closed. And, we were told to stay at home, and people started, kind of getting into a bunker mentality. Everything basically closed down except for, people were still at home with their computers. And so I think from a retail standpoint, Amazon was the big winner out of all of this. A lot of people decided to, they still needed to shop for certain essentials, and Amazon was still delivering to their door. So, a lot of the retail shopper went online because they were still able to get services and not services so much, but goods and other products delivered to their front door. So over the last probably 5 weeks or so, the state has been slowly reopening. We're a little bit behind where a lot of other states are. A lot of other states didn't maybe see as much of a problem as we had here in California, or their governors weren't as restrictive as Governor Newsom was. But about 5 weeks ago, we started opening up. It was first, and I'm sure Mario and Jim will be talking about, their pickup and to go and delivery options that were available to them at that time. But so, we had a little bit of that open, a little bit more retail started opening as the government allowed curbside retail pickup. And then, and now we've progressed into a more robust opportunity to get back to shopping. Services are now available. You can go get your hair cut again. Other things that were deemed non-essential are still essential, are allowed now. So, but you still, if you want to go get a manicure, forget it. So ladies, you'll have to wait a little bit longer for that because those are not available. You can go get your hair done and get your hair colored, but you can't get your fingernails polished at the same time. And so, just kind of looking at where we are now and where we're going, as you go around town, you'll see that some retailers are still closed. Some businesses are still doing curbside. Some have reopened. Some reopened like the day that they could reopen, they were open. Some opened before. I was shopping on Balboa Island and I saw over Memorial Day weekend a number of retailers were open for business and letting people in their shops. And then some are taking a little bit of a wait and see approach. I think if you go over to Fashion Island now, you'll see the whole mixed bag there. The restaurants mostly stayed open with the to-go. Some of the retailers are starting to reopen now, but many of them are closed. The major department stores, I haven't seen any of them reopen yet, although I imagine they're not too far behind. And again, as you go around town to the other various retail centers, you'll see them in various stages of reopening. I think what you're and so basically what we have here, because of this self-imposed shutdown, some businesses just couldn't even make it through the couple months. And so we've seen some bankruptcies. We've seen some local businesses go out of business. So for instance, if you were, not that there was one in Newport Beach, but there was in Fountain Valley next to the Costco there, a soup plantation. Well, that company declared bankruptcy. They have a buffet kind of environment that no longer goes with the situation that we have here with the coronavirus. And, they were struggling to begin with. If you were a patron of the Tyrant Food Restaurant on Coast Highway, they've gone out. If you used to go to the general store on Balboa Island, they've closed up. And so some businesses have closed down for the pandemic and are just not going to be back. Other major retailers have, announced that they're not going to reopen, like Pier 1 Imports is closed. And then there's other large retailers that have declared bankruptcy. They're in what they call Chapter 11. And so they're kind of restructuring. They're going to probably close a lot of stores around the country. Some of them are here in town. We haven't heard, but Neiman Marcus, for instance, declared bankruptcy. JCPenney's declared bankruptcy. Places like Gold's Gym and Hertz Rent-A-Car declared bankruptcy. Le Pen Quotidien, which is over in Fashion Island, declared bankruptcy. So you're going to see some of these stores reopen under the bankruptcy court jurisdiction. Others are going to just find that non-profitable locations are going to close. And so we're seeing some of that as well. The stores that are reopening, they have to deal with these industry guidelines that the state has put out. And they've been putting them out over, starting early in May up until even this week, I've seen some new guidelines come out. And so these guidelines basically cover industries in general. So there'll be guidelines for retail stores. There's guidelines for restaurants. There's guidelines for, hair salons. There's guidelines for schools, museums, things like that. Everything has, reopening guidelines. And these are quite substantial, booklets of things that these businesses should do in order to reopen their business and to protect their clients and customers as well as their employees. In addition to the state guidelines, the Orange County Healthcare Agency is another organization that is putting out guidelines, particularly with regard to restaurants, which they governed before, and I'm sure you'll hear again some more of that later on, but also with regard to any type of business. And there's been some controversy with their guidelines that initially over Memorial Day weekend, they came out with some guidelines that said that when out in public or in a retail environment or an office environment, if you can't stay 6 feet away from somebody, you shall, that's an important word, shall wear a mask in public. There was a little bit of a brouhaha, and they've kind of rescinded those and come out with new guidelines that don't really say shall anymore. So it's a little unclear, as to what their guidance is. And this is some of the struggle that business owners face, because some of these rules conflict. There's many different agencies that are putting out these rules. And you can look other places too. You can look to the Centers for Disease Control. You can look to the federal government. They all have different guidelines, and it's difficult. I mean, you know, I spent a lot of time looking at all of these, and it's hard to keep up. And we do our best here at the Chamber of Commerce to advise our members and anybody else who asks as to how they can comply with these. So basically what the guidelines are forcing businesses to do is to decide, you know, how are they going to prepare their place of business to receive their employees back and how to receive customers. And so as you're out there, and I'm sure you've seen it, and you certainly go to the supermarket, which we've been able to do, businesses have been retrofitting their workplaces, installing plastic barriers between the customer and the cashier, forcing, you know, wearing the mask. If you go to Costa Mesa, you know, the city of Costa Mesa has, you know, passed an ordinance that said if you're in a public place or in a place of business, you have to wear a mask. Newport Beach has not opted to do that. But that being said, some businesses are still requiring you to wear a mask. They require you to wear a mask, or they require you to line up, you know, socially distance, and wait outside until, you know, so there's not too many customers inside at any one time. And then other places, they're, you know, really doing nothing. You just walk in their store. You don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to do anything special. And their, you know, employees are also not being wearing protective gear. So it's really kind of a mixed bag. What I found, and I'll just share with you, you know, we had sometimes people leave messages on our information line, and I got a message about a restaurant today. And it was a customer that said, you know, I'm from Yorba Linda. I come down to Newport Beach all the time. I wanted to go to my favorite restaurant. I drove past and I saw their outdoor seating was, you know, people were right on top of each other, and the waiter was wearing his mask around his neck. And I didn't feel safe going in there. And so I went to another restaurant, and I had a great experience there because they were doing all the things that they're supposed to be doing. And this doesn't apply to restaurants, it applies to any place you go. And so certain people, you know, they don't really care about the rules, and they're not worried about, you know, getting sick or catching a virus or passing it along to somebody else. And so they don't really care about those things. But I think that the smart retailers are going to find that there are probably many more customers that are trying to be careful, want to remain socially distanced as best they can, want to feel safe when they're going into any type of either an office or retail environment. And so, you know, they're trying to do at least the basic minimal things to make their environments welcoming to these people, you know, their clients and customers. And so, you know, anybody who asks me, that's sort of kind of what I'm recommending to them. You know, you're never going to be able to follow the, you know, the 10 or 12 pages of guidelines for each industry, but you probably can do the certain basic minimum things. So people are basically, you know, choosing where they want to go. And it's not like, you know, there's been an initial rush, I think, for people to go out there, but because they were so, you know, pent up in their homes and, you know, how to shop or how to dine or something. But I think that initial surge is wearing off. And so I think that the retailers that are going to cater to the people that, you know, the most people, the ones, I mean, certainly if you don't want to be in an unsafe environment, you're just not going to go in there. And so you want to make sure. Yeah.
See, I think that's a good transition into talking about the hospitality sector and where we're going on that. So Gary, if we could bring you on board. And
will do. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. A little bit of breaking news. If you have not heard it, about a half hour ago, Disneyland announced their reopening on July 17th, along with California Adventure. And Downtown Disney will be opening up July 9th. And the Grand Californian and Disney Paradise Pier Hotel will open up on July 23rd. What hasn't been said publicly, though, is that the Disneyland Hotel will not be reopening at least for a while. And the number of people who will be allowed into the park, it'll be on a reservation basis only. Disneyland can handle as many as 40 or 50,000 people at any one time. The capacity is expected to be considerably smaller. We're talking anywhere from 5 to 15,000 people. So the impact on Anaheim, the impact on us is going to be a little bit different than if they had just opened up the entire park. But it is reopening. That's positive. We're excited about that. Let me go back a year ago. If all of you were on Coast Highway and there was a traffic jam and you were wishing that all these nasty visitors would go away and leave us alone, guess what? Your wish came true. This is kind of what I call our George Bailey moment. If you recall the movie, It's a Wonderful Life, what would life be like without George Bailey? And he got to find out the answer to that, and it wasn't a really pretty sight. And we're kind of finding over the last couple months what it was like to live without tourism in Newport Beach. And as a result, as many of you know, and I think we've got a few council people on the call here, the city had more than a $30 million shortfall in its budget that it approved yesterday. And just about all of it was related to the decline in visitor spending and specifically transient occupancy tax. In fact, I think the budget includes about a 66% decline in hotel tax. And that is unprecedented, certainly in this city. And to give you a sense of perspective, we were going into 2020 probably going to have one of our best years ever as a city. March, we started out at nearly 80%. Within 2 weeks, we were down below 30%. And then into March, we were in the single digits in terms of hotel occupancy, and we had a number of hotels that closed. So it was a sudden, dramatic, historic drop that we have never seen before. And to put that into perspective, Newport Beach tourism is a $1 billion a year industry. There are about 10,000 people who are employed both at the hotels and restaurants and the other aspect of the hospitality sector. And this pandemic has been truly horrific, and it has been like a nuclear bomb that has, the ground zero has been the tourism industry. Nationally, travel-related losses account for 38% of all the jobs lost nationally. That equates to about 8 million jobs that have been lost in this country, specifically related to the hospitality sector. And to put that into some sort of perspective, September 11th was really the last time tourism kind of universally stopped. And when that happened, the losses, which continued for several months, the losses were about $57 billion within the tourism sector. To give you a sense of perspective, remember that number, $57 billion. The coronavirus now has already caused $519 billion, which is 9 times the impact of 9/11. And we're only the 3rd month into this. So it was a sudden and hugely dramatic stop, because you had hotels literally closing, airlines being grounded, theme parks being closed. Remember, Disneyland had only closed for 1 day before all of this, and that was after 9/11 and after JFK's assassination, 1 day, and now they've been closed for over 3 months. Currently, the travel industry has a 51% unemployment rate, which, as many of you know, is double of that of the Great Depression. In California, we're expected to lose about $72 billion in tourism spending, which is about half of all the tourism spending for 2019. And that equates just in California to 613,000 jobs. So here in town, we had 5 major hotels that closed, not because they were mandated to, but because of lack of business. 4 of those hotels have either reopened or expect to be reopened within the next month. The one hotel that will be closed for the foreseeable future is Fashion Island. We don't expect that to open optimistically, maybe in the fall, likely probably sometime next year. We are waiting on some clarity from the Irvine Company onto that. And then, of course, as we move into recovery, the biggest challenge is going to be the meetings and convention business. And that is really the bread and butter business for Newport Beach. We tend to think it's all visitors, but the hotels really make their budgets by having meetings and conventions. That business has literally evaporated. There are no meetings, no conventions, nothing's being held here or pretty much any other place. And we don't expect that to come back until 2021. So now that's all the gloom. So here's sort of the upside and a little of the sunshine. April was clearly the worst month for business, and we began a remarkable, I will say, but slight recovery in May. Weekend leisure business from throughout Southern California is driving occupancy now and selling out the limited number of hotel rooms that are available at the hotels that have been opened. The Marriott, for example, only had about 150 or so rooms that they allowed to reopen because they wanted social distancing. The weekends, particularly over Memorial Day, they were able to sell it out. They've been having rate integrity, which is great because they've been holding rate. They haven't been giving the store away. And properties like Lido House have also been reporting some really good business. Pelican Hill just announced that they're going to open up their bungalows. The villas have been open throughout this, but now they're going to open up the bungalows. That'll happen in the next week. So the drive market is going to be our salvation to get us through 2020. And nationally, the drive market is already up about 20%. And Visit California, our state marketing organization, has been kind of doing what they call a consumer sentiment survey that kind of says, okay, are people ready to travel? Do they feel comfortable? And the numbers are still concerning, but they're trending in the right direction. They looked at people who say, I'm staying at home, I'm not going out, I'm still scared. That's about 49%. About 41% are people saying, I'm willing to go out and travel short distances and then go back home. And then there's about 10% of people saying, I'm done with that, I'm ready to go back and resume a normal life. So clearly, the people who are venturing out or want their old life back are about half. People who want to still stay at home still are kind of there. But the numbers are beginning to slowly shift. 50% of all Californians want to support the state's economy and travel within the state. So we are certainly going to be emphasizing that. We're going to be starting a very aggressive regional campaign within the next week to start marketing Newport Beach as a successful drive destination. Clearly, though, while the country is in a recession, the travel industry is in a depression. We're going to be coming back to life, but it's going to be very slow. Airbnb, though, said that more people booked Airbnbs between May 17th and June 3rd compared to last year, which really is a positive sign of intent to travel. American Airlines is going to be bringing back about 74% of their flights beginning in July. And overall travel demand in California is up about 10%, but we're still down about 86%. So we still have our beaches, we have our lifestyle, we have our harbor, we are Newport Beach. Even in pandemic, we are still an amazing destination. We're well positioned to survive this better than most people. And as Gloria Gaynor said in her disco hit, we will survive and we will get through this. Rush.
Gary, thank you very much. Appreciate ending on a more positive note than the first statistics. So on behalf of the city, we're going to switch now over to a hands-on operator, Jim Walker at the bungalow. And Jim, glad to have you with us. Share with us what's going on with your operation.
Well, good evening. We're sorry that we're not catering in our normal situation up at the Civic Center, and we miss the opportunity to feed everybody. So what I did is we're broadcasting live from the bungalow tonight, and you probably hear a little bit of crowd or noise in the background. But this has been a really whole different type of running a restaurant that I've never experienced. And some of the things that we are required to do, and some of the things that we've taken it upon ourselves to do, just to comply with COVID-19 and to make sure that we put our customers and our guests at ease. I thought I'd kind of go through some of the things that we're doing. First of all of our staff, when they arrive at work, we take their temperature, we log it, we keep a log. We have installed hand sanitizers throughout the restaurant and including outside the restaurant. We have contracted with a company called ServPro, which comes in every other week and totally sanitizes the restaurant from head to toe. They go through the kitchen, they go through the restrooms, they completely sanitize. Our bus staff, once we have guests at our table and they leave, the tables are once again sanitized. All of our servers, of course, are wearing masks. And some of the other things that we've done is we came through and took this time off to make some modifications in the restaurant. We completely remodeled our restrooms, replaced all the fixtures, and really tried to make it a lot more comfortable and more sanitary. We also went through our kitchen and redid the floors, cleaned it from top to bottom, and made some modifications in that to make sure that once again we are completely sanitary. On our menus, we have an app, so if you come in with your phone, you don't need to touch a menu. You just click on the app and our menu will come up. And we also do have menus that we do pass out that are sanitized. We literally have two different holders, one for pens that have been used and one for pens that have been sanitized. So we try and make sure that whenever a person signs a check, that pen is then taken into the used bowl and sanitized before it's put into recirculation. We tried every way that we know to maintain our level of service, but I thought I'd give you kind of a virtual tour of what social distancing looks like, at least in our restaurant. We have taken tables out. We have tried to maintain a 6-foot space between tables. Fortunately, our booths are high enough that they act as a barrier between. But I'm going to attempt to turn this around, so bear with me if I mess it up. I'm going to try and take this tour with you, but as I walk around, hopefully you can kind of see that the tables are separated and there's distance between. We have also in the bar made sure that we have social distancing. And say hi, Eric. Eric, my bartender. I'll just go downstairs briefly, but in our Corona Del Mar room, we've also taken tables. So hopefully, as you can see, there we go. We're not at 100% occupancy, and that has caused us to change our seating in that, I'll say it again here, where now we basically, on the weekends, have 2 seatings rather than taking reservations as we have in the past. And the reason that we do that is it really facilitates more people and it creates a better flow for our guests. During the week, we are able to take reservations, but we have changed our hours of operation. We are no longer open for lunch. We are open at 3 o'clock and we serve happy hour from 3 o'clock until 7. And then our dinner starts about 4 o'clock. So, you know, this has caused us to rethink how we operate. Obviously created a lot more intensity on sanitation. We try and make sure that we have staff that has a separation of duties where our bussers are primarily the ones or our expediter that handle the food. Of course, they have gloves on. Our servers generally do not handle the food. So it's changed our way of doing business dramatically. It's put a lot more burden on the staff to be conscious and aware of making sure we follow the protocol. So it's a whole different way of doing business. Fortunately, I appreciate that we opened about 2 weeks ago, and we've gotten a lot of support from the community. Business has been good, but the thing that we don't know is I think, as Gary was talking about, how long this is going to last. A lot of people, of course, are happy to get out and happy to finally have a place to go. I think gradually more and more restaurants are trying to reopen in Newport. I'm not quite sure what the holdup has been on their end, but I would look forward to more restaurants getting online and becoming part of the ability to serve the community. So it's going to be interesting to see going forward what comes next and when we're going to be able to really get back into full operation. So with that, I don't think any questions, but we're just glad to be open. It's nice to get everybody back and kind of have the spirit of the restaurant be a part of the community, and we're looking forward to maintaining that for the rest of the year. So that's kind of what's going on at the bungalow.
All right. Well, thank you, Jim. Appreciate the updates and seeing how you're handling the operation there. We're now going to shift over to Mario Marwick. And Mario, of course, as you may know, with his group, has the Stag Bar and Kitchen, Dory Deli, has Malarkey's, and I'm sure I'm missing one or two. Mario will probably be able to fill us in. But we welcome Mario. Mario?
Thank you, Rush. My name is Mario Mrovic. I own the Lounge Group. It's a collection of 11 different restaurant concepts throughout Orange County, 5 of which are in Newport Beach, 3 are in Costa Mesa. What makes my company different is that we acquire and create unique concepts that have their own identity within each community. Lackey's by the Sea, Dory Deli, the Stag Bar and Kitchen, Malarkey's Irish Pub, and the Helmsman Ale House. Lackey's by the Sea was established in 1953 by William Blackstock. It's the only bar in the country that has a beach named after it. Dory Deli is a concept that was a passion project with me and my partner, Andrew. We acquired that property, didn't know what to do with it. So we kind of reverse engineered what we thought would fit the community the best, and the Dory Deli that started off as a passion project turned into a thriving business. Stag Bar and Kitchen, it's the oldest bar in Orange County, been there since 1908. Malarkey's Irish Pub, it's a staple since 1977. And the Helmsman Ale House is the only brewery in the city of Newport Beach. I had, and I say past tense, 580 employees throughout Orange County. On March 17th, we received the shutdown and stay-at-home notice from the Orange County Health Officer. That was one of the most difficult days of my life. The notice stated that we'd be closed for about 2 weeks and our estimated opening date would be April 1st. Closing my company for 2 weeks seemed like an eternity. Gary mentioned that Disneyland was only closed for a couple of days ever. My family business in Fullerton, we haven't closed a single day since 1987. When we had blackouts, I go in there with candles and a radio and sell drinks when I was in my 20s because I didn't want to close. I sat in the room when I got the stay-at-home notice on March 17th with my partner, my regional manager, and we decided, based on the April 1st opening date expectation, we wanted to keep all of our managers on full salary. We kept everybody on full salary for a 2-week period and just decided that we're going to keep them busy and do some deferred maintenance. From the first day of the shutdown until April 3rd, we offered family meals for 580 employees for almost 2.5 weeks. 580 employees every single day and their families. On March 20th, 3 days after the shutdown, we distributed 9,000 rolls of toilet paper to the community, 4 of the 9,000 with the senior housing facilities. Well, as the April 1st date got closer, we heard back from the politicians, and the closure, instead of being reopening on April 1st, it was until further notice. And that's unfortunate because if we would have known it was until further notice from the very beginning, we would have managed our labor, our inventory, and our furloughing decisions would have been made a little bit more efficiently. At this point, knowing that April 1st was indefinite, we decided to keep all of our salaried managers on full payroll. Many of them had families, mortgages, and they're valuable assets to my organization, so we didn't want to lose them. We officially closed 9 of our 11 locations. We furloughed 540 employees. And I had well-paid managers from 11 locations working at Dory Deli in Playa Mesa. They were doing minimum wage work, cleaning, cooking, working on the line, anything that it took. I wanted to keep them employed, but the only jobs we had left were non-managerial positions. So now it was official. 9 out of 11 locations were closed, and we had to pivot our entire business model to takeout only. Again, not knowing how long this would go on for. One of the biggest issues, I think, for everybody was timeline. We kind of kept getting stretched out on when's the curve going to flatten? What does that mean? When are we going to reopen? And once we do reopen, like under which guidelines? Between April 1st and May 1st, I was appointed to be on the committee for the County of Orange to help formulate the guidelines for reopening Orange County. So at this point, we acknowledge that we're losing more money staying open for takeout than we would lose if we actually closed the businesses, but we decided to stay open because we wanted to keep our managers working. Keep in mind that your typical takeout concept is lower quality, high volume food that's housed in a smaller square footage facility with minimal labor. Most dine-in restaurants have takeout as an addition to their core business model of dining in. The feeling at this point was pretty much dismal. The uncertainty of time did not allow any business owner to formulate an opening strategy. And we really needed the Payroll Protection Program, PPP loans, to give us the incentive to reopen our other 9 locations and bring back many more employees. Even though takeout was not profitable, if we were able to get those PPP loans, we'd at least have the incentive to want to reopen. I spent hundreds of staff hours consulting with bankers and attorneys before the PPP loans even went live. We were ready to be, on the early wave of applications for all 11 locations. And when it came time to apply, our bank, Chase Bank, completely dropped the ball on every possible aspect of applying for a PPP loan. We had our office team on 24-hour shifts attempting to submit loan applications. We tried in the mornings, we got knocked off because websites had too much traffic. We tried at midnight and the websites would crash. This went on for days. The bankers stopped taking phone calls, and we called the bankers, or voicemails would say to refer to the website. And the website crashed, it would say, call your banker. Remember, this was all new. No one knew the process. Everybody was being told that you had to use your existing bank that houses your payroll, because the Payroll Protection Program was based on how much payroll was spent. So as things kind of unraveled a little bit, and a lot of the larger banks were making some serious mistakes, we found out that we were able to go to a smaller SBA loan broker. The broker assured me that they'd be able to get our loans processed. We took a slightly lower loan amount because there's different loan tiers. And once you break a certain tier, there's more scrutiny, it takes more time. And because time was ticking, we got a little bit less money than we could have gotten, but we had a better assurance that we were going to get it. So at some point we got funded one at a time, all 11 loans. We ended up getting our payroll protection program funding. But then the next stage began. We only had 8 weeks to spend all of it. 75% needs to be allocated to labor. How can we spend 75% of our PPP money on labor when we're not even open? And once again, the uncertainty of not having a timeline, and there is no end in sight. So we received our funding and we sat tight, and we're trying to formulate an opening plan for all locations. So finally, we decided that the opening date for all 11 locations, 2 of which were already open for takeout, was going to be May 1. We're going to open the remaining 9 locations for takeout. At that point, and remember, we still didn't have an end in sight on when dine-in was going to happen at this point. And that was even with me being on the committee with Orange County, there was still no end in sight. We rehired 150 employees leading up to May 1, and this meant the employee rehires, updating websites, modifying hours, social media launch, menu changes, deep cleaning and deferred maintenance on all facilities, restocking the kitchen from scratch. This was a daunting task. And I'm pretty sure Jim will tell you that when a restaurant's closed for a few weeks, it's hard to believe how many things just kind of start to break. We went to the Stag Bar, and after being closed for 4 or 5 weeks, we didn't realize that one of our walk-in coolers wasn't working for about a week. And then the cooler was blowing at 80-degree temperature, and we had to replace the entire cooler. Well, what was already a daunting task was made even harder. Many employees, when we gave them the good news that we're able to reopen, they respectfully requested if we could bring them back at a later stage of our reopening process. The employees were thoroughly enjoying the unemployment benefits and making between $1,000 to $1,100 a week and not having to work. We have a great team. We have a real good family feel at every location. And the employees, they weren't being disrespectful about it. They were just asking, hey, if you could do me a favor and not bring me back, I'd really appreciate it because life is pretty good right now. Some of them were single mothers that were enjoying the bonding time with their children and not having to have daycare. And others were ones that were actually trying to milk the system. Ultimately, we hired back some of our best staff. We launched our takeout program for all locations, and the fear of the PPP timeline running out was our next obstacle. Many businesses paid a price for being proactive. The people that acted quickly to get their PPP loans funded were in the worst position because the 8-week timeline started from the date of funding. So the ones that did everything right and applied early were the ones that were the most stressed out, because at this point we're 5-6 weeks into having our money, and we started making some rapid decisions on, if you don't spend at this point before Congress updated the PPP plan, if you didn't spend 75% of the total money funded, they didn't forgive a pro rata share of that. So you had to spend it or pay it back. So a lot of businesses that I was talking to were literally they were hiring employees back and putting employees on payroll just to spend the money. So we started making decisions to bring more employees back than we needed, putting more people in the kitchen than we needed. And then luckily, Congress voted recently to extend the timeline from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. So now that the timeline's extended, we kind of slow down a little bit on the staffing. We're able to make fiscally responsible decisions. We have all 11 locations open. It was Memorial Day weekend when we got the text message on Saturday morning. I had the bags packed. I was walking to the car, my wife, my 2 daughters, and my dog, and we even have a hedgehog. We're packing the car up to go on a trip to Santa Barbara. And I got the call that we're able to open the restaurants effective immediately. Well, I got suitcases in hand. My wife looked at me. She's like, "What are you going to do?" I'm like, "Well, we're not going to Santa Barbara." So we canceled everything. I made a phone call, and we opened up 11 restaurants that same day in a matter of a 5-hour timeline. It was a scramble. We were picking up the phone. We're calling employees. We got flatbed trucks. We were, moving furniture and chairs from one restaurant to another. And ultimately, in one day, we reopened 11 restaurants for Dine, and it was also Memorial Day weekend. So we were stocked for our modest takeout food and beverage program, and then we opened for, a restricted dine-in program. So everything worked out great. Since then, we were, able to. Well, let's put it this way: when you're opening 11 locations from scratch after being closed for almost 3 months, it's a daunting task to open up one restaurant at a time. It felt like we were literally opening for the first time ever. Some of our employees didn't come back, so we had new employees getting retrained. A lot of our good employees did come back, but I'm going to tell you that the feedback from the community has been fantastic. The people of Costa Mesa and Newport Beach throughout Orange County, I mean, it's unbelievable how many people they just want to be supportive. They want to be supportive to business owners and employees. Knowing that the occupancy is restricted, I've noticed that my customers are giving the employees a little bit better tip percentage, because they want to be generous and they're very understanding. So it's been a whirlwind from March 17th until 2 weeks ago, and I mean, hopefully nothing like this ever happens again. But the community that we live in has been very supportive and embracing, and we're lucky to be here.
Thank you, Mario. I'd say quite a business running that many restaurants and keeping the quality up and the service up, and so we're glad that you're having the results that you are having. We have time for some question and answers. We have one that's come in. It says, this is for Jim Walker. It says, "Our family loves bungalows." Oh, it's your mom that sent this in, I think. So, and we're happy to see you reopen. Quick question: what are the 2 most foundational changes that will affect the restaurant business model from here on out?
Well, it's a pretty profound question. It's a good question. And I think Mario would probably agree with me, is I think that it's going to change our perspective on, I mean, not only social distancing, but really, I think, putting together programs and really putting a lot more emphasis on sanitation, on the fact that, these things we kind of take for granted in terms of being together and what have you. And I think it's going to take a while for people to regain the confidence, whether it be restaurants or bars or sporting events, that they're not going to be impacted by being in a crowd. And so I think there's going to be just I heard someone say that the custom of shaking hands will be a thing of the past. And so how is that going to impact us, going forward in a situation where you have a crowded restaurant or you're seated close to somebody else and they sneeze? What are the reactions going to be? How do we handle that? So I think that, we're going to have to look at, from a restaurant standpoint, how do we encourage people and make sure they feel that they're in a safe, sanitary environment. The other thing that I would say is, I think what we don't know going forward, and kind of to Mario's point, what happens in our industry is, we pay May bills with June money. We're always running a month behind. And so the challenge that we face going forward is, frankly, our rent has been deferred, our sales tax was deferred, all these things were deferred, but they weren't forgiven. And so the day that we opened, we were heavily in debt. I mean, granted, we got the PPP and we got the loans, but that doesn't cover the lack of revenue. What a lot of people may or may not realize is that, I certainly didn't take a paycheck. My servers were better off than I was, but I still had bills that were accumulating. And going forward, how we're going to solve that problem if our sales don't pick up, and if we don't become more profitable, we're kind of behind the 8 ball before we get started. And so I'm thankful for the loans. That helps a lot, but that doesn't recapture and will never recapture that close time down. We'll never get back what we lost. So I think, unfortunately, the news talks about the mortality rate of restaurants is going to be high. They're estimating 25 to 30% of the restaurants will not reopen. I think the restaurants that do will be looking at modifying their menus. They're going to be looking for ways to, one of the things that has been an outgrowth of this that I think will change the dynamic of the restaurants has been a lot more focus on the to-go business. I think what COVID-19 has done is created an environment where people have become much more comfortable ordering food to go. And I think it's created a situation where people have been forced to learn how to do that, and now they know how to do it, and it's convenient, so that's where I think the industry, ourselves included, are looking at what can we do to enhance that to-go business. How can we maintain it? Because we need every revenue source that we can muster up. There's still a lot of uncertainty that we all face going into this next year, and there's a lot of variables out there. So until that uncertainty becomes less threatening, I think that we're kind of walking on eggshells for a while. So I hope that answers your question, but that's kind of the two things that I see that are really dynamic and what we're going to face ahead.
So many unknowns in front of us. Steve, question to you. You had mentioned that there were some of the major department stores that have been filing bankruptcy. We've seen that in the news. You also mentioned that it would likely cause many of them to close down their less successful sites. Have you heard any rumors, and maybe this is a question for Gary Sherwin as well, have you heard any rumors of some of these icon operations closing down in Newport Beach?
No, actually, and I probably don't anticipate that that'll happen here. I mean, they tend to, because of the affluence of our community and Orange County in general, they don't and the shopping centers, obviously, that they're in here in Newport Beach and Fashion Island is very successful. So, Neiman Marcus is the one that has filed for bankruptcy. There's some talk of Macy's maybe having some trouble too. So there's always that potential. JCPenney's was the other one. We don't have one, but there is one up at, I think, at the Westminster Mall, for instance. And I've heard that there's talk of eventually that mall possibly even going away. It wasn't a very successful mall at the height of the boom, and you can imagine how well it's going to be doing going forward. So I don't think we'll see that. We may see some of the smaller retailers drop out. Certainly independents in town, I think, are in jeopardy, some of them, as they face reopening challenges. One of the things I didn't mention earlier, too, is a lot of the challenges that the businesses are having and is getting their employees to come back, period. Some of them are on unemployment now, making more money than they were being employed because of the way the extra $600 a week that the federal government is providing for unemployment. Some still don't feel comfortable going back to work because they're afraid to get sick. Some have gone on to find other jobs. And so, that's going to be a big challenge. But as far as the major retailers go, I would suspect that most of them will stay. Even Le Pain Quotidien, which is over at Fashion Island, I would suspect that that's a good location for them and that they'll continue in some form, whether they're bought out by some other company or stay as that chain.
And Gary, with respect to our hotels, are they all going to make it? Are they all going to stay? What's the story there?
Well, I think, yes, I think they will survive. The question will be some of the ownership of some of these hotels and whether or not they decide that they have the capital to continue. We have some of our hotels that are owned by some of these large REITs, and Host, for example, they'll do just fine. Our hotels in this market actually overperform compared to most markets around the country. That's good news. It'll just be whether or not the ownership has the capital to be able to sustain them during this trough period. And that's, hotels are very capital intensive. And if they've got the money to be able to weather this, they'll be fine. I don't think we're going to necessarily lose any hotels. It remains to be seen whether or not they're going to change ownership and go a different route. I saw one question, by the way, about elasticity on rates. The one good news to share is that the hotels have embraced what we call rate integrity, meaning they're not giving away the store. So far, all the hotels have said that if they're going to be open, they're going to charge a competitive rate, particularly during summer, because during the recession in 2008, they heavily discounted and it took them years to get back to where they needed to be. So they have almost uniformly decided that they are not going to do that. And even though they're going to have a smaller number of rooms, they're going to charge market rates. And so far they've been getting them. And that's good news.
A question for all of you. I'd like a response with a number and then a qualifier on the number. The qualifier either week, month, or year. Give me a number as to how long you think this quote unquote new normal will last. Mario?
Well, the new normal, with all the different industries and concerts and baseball games and everything else, I don't know when all of those are going to be open for full seating. As far as my industry, I think every day more and more people get comfortable. We have a theory, the ones that are not concerned about the risk, they're the ones going out and eating and not wearing a mask and they're having a great time. And then you got the ones who are high risk that should stay home, and they have the ones that are healthy, but they're risk averse and they choose to stay home. So you get the ones that choose to go out, the ones that choose to stay home, and the ones that should stay home. And the more the statistics are out there, the more people start to feel comfortable with the numbers. I think every week it gets better and better. I for one, am very proud of Orange County. If you look at our numbers and our statistics and our total number of infections and ICUs and deaths in Orange County. I mean, I believe there's a doctor at Hoag Hospital who 7 weeks ago said, we not only flattened the curve 7 weeks ago, we were on the other side of the curve. So, I mean, every worst case scenario that could have happened didn't happen. Every best case scenario that was put forth, we beat that and we exceeded it. So how long is this going to last? I'm hoping that by the 4th of July, we're going to have a lot of people feeling very comfortable. And I'm hoping that hopefully by, fall, winter, I think this whole thing goes away. It's kind of what I'm hoping. So, depending on what the industry is.
Steve?
Well, I hate to rain on your parade, Rush, as you pointed out earlier. And I think Mario's being very optimistic. I mean, I think certain sectors will bounce back quickly, but I think other sectors, it's going to take a long time. I'm sure when you get to Gary, he's going to talk about hotels. But, tourism, travel, things that run our economy here in Newport Beach, I think it's going to be a while. There are those three sectors that are three tranches of people that Mario just mentioned, the ones that are out there today, the ones that are being cautious, and the ones that are still staying home. And I think, that's going to last for a while. I think the Fed just came out and said that they don't expect our economy to hit the numbers that it was hitting in 2019 until 2022. So that's several years out from now. I agree that things have not been as bad as it could have been, and certainly things are bouncing back. But we're also if you follow what's going on, the government pumped $3 trillion into the economy with the programs, and they're talking about even more stimulus money coming on later on. Well, that creates a sort of a comfort bubble that is going to get burst here in about 2 or 3 months as the money runs out for the PPP. Businesses that try to reopen and didn't maybe make it because they didn't see enough customers come back to keep funding their operating costs are going to close. Unemployment, I think, will stay in the double digits for at least the next 6 months. Even though we saw a pretty big decrease recently. So I'm not as optimistic. I'm gonna say that we're probably not going to see real like 90% back until sometime middle of the next year. And it'll be, and when you talk about the new normal, how long is that going to last? I mean, new normal is going to last forever. Certain things have changed that will not go back the way they were. Just with the shutdown, I mentioned Amazon earlier as being one of the big beneficiaries. This whole pandemic has pushed forward the move to shop online years ahead of schedule. And so people, that never would have bought groceries, for instance, online and have it delivered to their front door are doing that. And I think that they won't go back to going shopping, at least not as much as they did before. And they found out that there's other sites even other than Amazon where they can buy the things that they want. So I'm hoping that the people listening to this, the best thing that they can do is shop local, support local businesses because they really need your help now. That would be the message that I would want to put out there. Go to Mario's restaurants. If you're going to take a vacation, think about a staycation in town. Support one of the local hotels. They're all up, the ones that are up and running, and certainly support the local retailers that could definitely use your business.
All right. Well, thank you. We're down to about 30 seconds here. So, Gary, you got a number and a qualifier?
Well, someone sent me a list the other day and they said, no one's going to be stepping on a plane again. Business travel is dead. No one's going to want to go anywhere with their family. And when I looked at it, they said, look at when they said this, and this was after 9/11. So I put a caveat when we do the gloom and doom and say things will never be the same. We've been down this path before and people have short memories. So yes, I think in the short term, we're going to have a difficult road probably for the rest of this year. The big thing, of course, will be the vaccine. And the vaccine is the only thing that is going to be 100% restoring confidence, I think, in people that they know that they can be safe. In the meantime, we're going to have to kind of muddle along. But the rest of this year, I think we're going to lose events. Coachella Valley, the music festival just announced they're canceling. So 2020 is kind of the lost year, but I do believe by next year, we're going to be back on our feet in a much better way.
Well, I'd like to end on that good news then and thank the panel. Steve, we appreciate your comments related to business. Good to see you. Jim, always good to have you here from the bungalow.
Thank you.
Encourage everybody that wants a good steak, they need to get over there. Gary, your leadership in this town is incredible, and you've kept the circle closed with good funds to give us the quality of life that we have. And we hope that that comes back soon. Mario, you're a real entrepreneur and deliver a quality product and have an amazing capability of training staff to be right on target. So thank you all. And Ed, we'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Rush. Well, Speak Up Newport thanks Steve, Gary, Jim, and Mario for taking time from their busy schedules to participate in this webinar, and also for all they do for our community. Now, please plan on joining us on July the 8th at 4 p.m. for our next webinar in this series. Our topic and speakers will be Grace Lueng, Newport Beach City Manager, and Finance Officer Dan M. to give us an update on the 2020-2021 budget that was adopted by the City Council last night. Specifically, we hope they'll talk about how it will affect the level of services the city will now provide to us and what contingencies the city has in place or in case the revenue shortfall becomes greater than the projected $30 million plus. So please join us then. Watch for our announcements and on our program and how to register. And until then, stay sheltered and be safe.